The following is a series of observations over the last few months that I don't know if it'll be long enough for each topic to be a video, but I wanted to mention and get feedback from various people on what they think and on some of the conjectures that I've made, or theories, I guess, in some ways, of what's going on. And some things I thought that were settled, but apparently aren't. So topic one will be judgment on circumstances of birth. Now, I thought with Martin Luther King's very famous speech that we had decided to give up on judging, on putting a value judgment on people based on the circumstances of their birth, such as you might be born blind, a certain skin color, you might have a certain disease, you might be missing a limb, you might be born to poor parents or wealthy parents, middle class parents, whatever. But the circumstances of your birth, we do not make a value judgment on. Of course, I draw a distinction between, there is common sense judgment, such as if you have fairer skin, you're going to be out at the beach, you're going to need a lot more sunscreen than someone who is naturally darker skinned. Although both may need, of course, sunscreen. So I'm talking about the value of a person, that you are worth less as a human being. You do not equate a full human being. Or in some cases, maybe we overvalue that person. You are worth more than a human being, like standard would be. And that gets in, and I thought this was settled. I thought we, as a society, and pretty much even over the world, even though many places don't subscribe to this, they still kind of at least pay lip service because they know that it kind of is how you should believe. Apparently not. And if anyone has any feedback on that, if you have a situation where it is appropriate to put a value judgment on a human being due to the conditions of their birth, I would be happy to hear it. So please let me know when that is appropriate, because I had thought, again, that was settled. No, that's just a no-go. We're not going there. That's not anymore. That we don't do that. Second topic, privilege, which is kind of related to the first. So again, this idea of privilege is very baffling to me, because it's apparent that everyone has a different starting point in life with a whole bunch of different sorts of negatives and positives. And in particular, the idea of white privilege seems baffling to me, because that is synonymous with white supremacy. So the idea that white people, which are not a majority of the whole earth, I think there's something like 30%, if that they have been able to dominate and subjugate the rest of the people. And in fact, this subjugation is systemic, and we can't point it out easily or get rid of it easily. And that even with some white people that realize this and accept this and actively fight against it, and you have all the non-white people fighting against it as well, so the actual small number percentage of the global population that would be part of this privileged group, and I guess accepting it fully, their privilege as it were, even unknowingly, that even with all these other people combating it, you still can't overcome it. You still can't point it out. You still can't get rid of it. That sounds like white people are superior. Like they're actively trying to basically lose their privilege, and they still can't do it. That, I don't know. That's like going into a contest of weightlifting, and you're actively trying for your opponent to win. So you do purposely a bad job of picking up the weight. I mean, I don't even see how this really functions or works when you think about it for a few minutes, because it really does sound like he doesn't even try, he automatically wins because of his privilege, and the other person's putting in all this effort and everything, and it amounts to a loss for them. That's not like, okay, well, they have some sort of magical superiority that just allows them to win weightlifting contests. So white people have this magical superiority that allows them to win at the game of life, so to speak. That seems ridiculous, and that there are plenty of examples that we have of where being white doesn't help. And certainly there are, like I said, a minority of the global population. So again, if anyone can make any sense of this beyond that it is white supremacy, then I would be happy to hear your further explanation of this. Something else that, topic 3, that is, there is a bar to discussing abstract concepts. And by what this, I kind of throw in a couple different things to this, but for one is youth. If you're very young, how can you decide what the current economic system should or shouldn't be, what kind of policies and regulatory, what laws should be enacted? I mean, you don't have the depth of understanding of either life or of just factual, like history or philosophy, even of the sciences, to put forth a rational or coherent idea. I often see young people treated very seriously in these discussions in a worldwide stage. Now, certainly, I think when you're talking to someone one-on-one or even in a classroom setting, you should pay everyone equal respect. However, that respect goes two ways, and the youth should acknowledge their ignorance just by dint of being young, and learning what is to be taught. Now, of course, in schools, public schools, in a lot of ways, it's more like indoctrination. It's not an actual education, so that's a separate issue. However, trying to uproot the economic system or the political system, that seems insane for an 18 or 20-year-old. Like, no one's that smart at that age. Maybe in the past where people had to grow up earlier, but certainly nowadays, you don't know anything of the world. And as a secondary point, that is just one barrier to discussing abstract concepts in a coherent way. But the second is, not everyone is as interested in abstract concepts. They don't have the interest nor the pursuit of educating themselves on how to talk about these abstract concepts that you can't grab and hold in a coherent manner that makes sense. And that is based upon some sort of reasoning system other than just, I feel this, thus it must be true. Like, I feel the abstraction, thus it's true. That doesn't work for discussing, religion, philosophy, theology. You could even get into scientific theories that, F equals ma is abstract, right? We don't see force, so to speak. We see the effect of force, but we don't directly see the F equals ma in the universe. Not everyone has the same skills and abilities. Some people are very good with their hands, like a carpenter might be. They have a great skill with that, or even a welder. But, we don't all have the same talents and lack of talents. And I think abstraction is one area that we have to realize that it appears that everyone can talk about philosophy, for example, but it's actually a very small minority that can make sense of that and actually do it in a structured, positive manner that's actually productive rather than just, I feel this, thus it is true. That's kind of the literal, almost interpretation of philosophizing is, I don't like that theory. My gut instinct on that, when I hear it, thus it's bad, And I think most people that would philosophize would agree that might be something to start with, but that's like the initial, that's not your end point. That isn't, I feel, thus it is. That is at the most only a starting point to begin the discussion and the process of understanding something in philosophy. I think something that we confuse in these abstract concepts is just because you can say something or have a theory that sounds good doesn't mean it's actually true. And a lot of these abstract concepts have to be put into action. Sometimes they have to be put in action over long periods of time as well before you can see the effect of what it actually is. If you act on these beliefs, what effect do you get? And as humans, I think sometimes we confuse the ability to say something as the truth of something, whereas that's not exactly how reality works. You have to put it into action and see what results from putting it into action, and then you can kind of base upon that, because it's life is really complicated, and when you're talking about things that take years and years or even generations, we're not really equipped very well to analyze that over the long term. We're just not very wise creatures, and it does take wisdom is almost like the collective wisdom of our ancestors and us in the current time frame, all adding together to help us to navigate life. But if you take one person in isolation, they just aren't very smart, they aren't very wise, and they're not very capable, to be perfectly honest. Topic 4. Social media is not the problem. We are. Our values and our morality, or lack thereof, is what the problem is. So I hear a lot of people complain about Twitter, that it's awful. Everyone seems to agree. Even Jack Dorsey seems to agree that it has a huge problem and it's negative. So no one's happy with Twitter. Okay, well, I never understood why. Why is Twitter so bad? Now, I'm not on Twitter, but of course I know what it is. Why is Twitter such a bad place? Well, look at it this way. We have kind of ditched morality, objective morality, on our religion, theology, philosophy to a large degree. And because of that, we don't understand the world of abstraction near as well as, say, our ancestors did. But we have more powerful tools that allow us to make our actions even stronger. So, for example, today someone can send a tweet and pretty much be in contact with everyone on the entire earth. That was impossible, even for an emperor in times past. There was no way that they would have that kind of instant communication with everyone or instant effect. And, you can send a tweet that could be, legitimately could have real world consequences. Sometimes people might get fired, people might lose status or positions, various effects like that. So Twitter has merely amplified our virtues, our morality in action. So instead of just saying something to your neighbor, you can say it to the whole town, now to the whole world. So it's only an amplifier. And if you look at our morality, our values, our meaning in life as kind of the starting point for a human being, and everything kind of grows out from that, Twitter is just the tool of the people that developed it, Jack Dorsey, in particular, their morality. What you're seeing is Jack Dorsey's soul on display for the whole world, amplified, probably like 1,000 times more powerful than anyone else in history might be. And of course, for the other social media platforms, it would be this effect as well. What they code and what they write, that is actually from their morality, because it affects what they put into it and what biases. And I don't mean bias in like a racial sense. It's got just whatever things they are attracted toward and whatever things they are repulsed from. Because every human pretty much has things that push and pull at them. No one's completely open to everything, and no one's completely closed. Obviously maybe a small percentage of the population might be completely opposed and completely open, but for the vast majority of 99.9% of people, there's going to be some things that we're attracted toward and some things that we're repulsed from. And I think when you see an algorithm that someone has written or a group of people have written, you're seeing kind of their souls. You're seeing their morality in effect. Now you can also see the morality of the shareholder that affect this process, and the morality of the people using the product, the Twitter users, their morality also in effect. So you're seeing everyone's morality just amplified like 1,000 times, and that's why it seems like such a mess. In particular, it seems like such a mess because we have also lost the ability to talk about morality in any sort of meaningful fashion. Even this video here that you're seeing is affected by YouTube's morality. Will it be banned? Will it be censored in some sort of fashion? The algorithms that they've put into effect. Also, my own morality you're seeing on what I focus on, what I talk about, what I don't talk about, the words that I use. And then your morality if you make a comment. What you say is you. Is your morality in action, your beliefs, what you derive meaning from and what you do not derive meaning from. I just think that we're focused entirely on the wrong problem with Twitter. We're like trying to censor and ban people and things like that. And it's like, whoa, I don't think that's going to help anything. Like, I think legitimately the more they try to do those sorts of things, overall, the problem will get worse and worse and worse. And people will be less happy and less satisfied with the product, and Jack Dorsey will be less happy. I mean, he needs to do something on Twitter that is actually good, that actually has a positive, meaningful effect. And I guess he could ask him really, like, what's the point of Twitter? Is it just to yell at each other? Is it just for the loudest voice, the one that can say the most, emotional, impactful statement, which obviously it's much easier to make negative, impactful statements than it is to make positive ones. I mean, the positive ones might take years and years and years of work to become a statement that's actually like that. So I would ask them, again, what's your point of Twitter's existence, Jack? What's the point? Just to have people yell at each other? I mean, maybe. I mean, you could say that in the cacophony and the chaos, perhaps some productivity will happen, but I don't know. I've never heard anyone approach social media from a morality perspective and say the problem is actually spiritual, and all these other problems that you're seeing are symptoms of that spiritual problem that we'd have no way to talk about the morality, the world of meaning. Kind of decided in a large way that doesn't exist, and hence the reason that you see all the chaos is, and that they'll never fix it. They'll never be able to actually get it to work correctly, so to speak, that it'll be good, that it'll be peaceful, that we'll be able to have an agreement, and that it will work properly for everyone. Topic 5, abstractions, values, meaning set into action. And again, this is kind of related to the other topics, and even to the social media posts, that I don't think people understand the abstractions. And I'm using that word in the most broadest sense possible, so it's not contentious and we don't get caught up on arguing truth or, transcendental or, illusory belief, that sort of thing. So just abstractions that give us value and meaning that we set into action. For the human being, it's not apparent because those take time. If you're studying for a huge test that you're going to have at the end of a semester, and you're taking the whole semester, how well you do on that test is determined by all those days in between, from the beginning to the end, of what you do during that time. How much time do you devote to studying? How good is the time do you devote to studying? Are you studying what you're supposed to be? Did you not pay attention in class and not realize certain things are going to be on tests and certain things weren't going to be on the test, right? Or did you miss a critical day, even through no fault of your own, or through purposely your fault, you just didn't go and you missed important information about the test on that day? And it's very hard sometimes for us to see the value of doing something over and over, because a lot of times we take it for granted. Most of us take for granted that when we turn on the electricity, our lights come on, when we flip a switch, that our computers work just all the time. And it seems kind of amazing that we have such predictability of things working in our lives. And I know it's not perfect, but I mean, if you really look around your house at all the things that could have a failure at some point in the line, it's catastrophic points of failure, but it all seems to work. Even people driving down a road, I'm often amazed that isn't a wreck, every 5 minutes just on one little road. alone, in a city, like every minute there should be a wreck. So sometimes I don't think we understand that what gives meaning to our lives, and we don't get a choice of picking a meaning or not. Human beings will have a meaning, even if they decide that non-meaning is the meaning. That is still a meaning to life, and that those beliefs will be put into action, because for a human to act, they have to believe something. Even not believing is believing in something. So we kind of don't get a choice on these abstractions. We can't just say it's fake and move along. Well, I mean, I guess you can say that, but then again, you're saying that is the abstraction that they're, so again, you don't get to actually participate in that and negate it just through a simple, I think, I believe that they don't exist, so thus they do not affect me. And I think if we could get that idea across more, that you don't get to not participate in this, unfortunately. It's just a fact of human existence. It might make some of the other problems that we talk about a little bit easier, that we can see more to the root instead of seeing the periphery or just annoying symptoms that keep popping up. Weird, bizarre symptoms, like, why does this keep popping up? Why is this? What is this over here in the problem? Why is this problem? It's like, okay, well, if you got a bunch of weird stuff popping up, we need to trace this stuff back. And I think in the world of abstraction, to a large degree, is where we're having the problem. Topic 6, the prime divide. Either that you believe in God, something bigger, higher than yourself, or you are at the top. That's the nihilistic view. Your consciousness, your ego is the one that is judging, is the one that's deciding whether to accept things or not. In effect, placing yourself, your ego, as the judge rather than God as the judge. And I say the prime divide because I'm wondering if that is the most important distinction that a human being can make, that they have decided that because God exists, no greater judge than themselves exists. And so they have the right, I suppose you would say from their point of view, to deem everything in their life. And the reason that got me thinking about it was I do listen to atheists and anti-theists YouTube channels and talks that they give, and it often seems that they have a lack of humility. And by that I don't mean that they're simpering or they're cowardly, but they recognize nothing greater, to a large degree, a lot of them, than themselves in judging. So you might see someone say that secular humanism is what we should be pursuing. Okay, how do you even know that? How do you even know? Like, how can you just throw away 5,000-10,000 years instantly just nope, it's bad, gone? And you don't actually have anything to posit that is better, that actually will give positive values, other than just a theory, other than just an idea in your head. And I can imagine anything that would be better. I can imagine a world of gumdrops and, fairies that would be much more pleasant for everyone. And the fairies would just come down and give you a sandwich whenever you're hungry. Just because I can imagine something that doesn't have any actual substance to it, that it will be transformed into a reality. In a lot of ways, I just see them avoiding conversation about religion and what we should be doing as human beings, because they've just assumed one is bad, and because I am the prime mover, because God doesn't exist, I get to adjudicate what should and should not be allowed, which, by the way, isn't entirely wrong. So I do want to give them some credit here. Obviously we do decide as people, but if you want to look at it as a pyramid, God's at the top, then the individual that decides as kind of like as a secondary judge, but they are always subordinate to the ultimate judge, which is God. Whereas if you don't believe in God, you automatically get bumped, because you're cutting off that top, to the top of the list, and you are now the judge, the ultimate God, in effect God in a way. And you do see that a bit in what they espouse, and I don't know, it is kind of disheartening to see such a lack of pursuit of the truth, because they take the easiest Christians to make fun of and mock, and I guess debunk, if you want to call it that, which is the fundamentalists. And of course they debunk them on scientific grounds. But they also why don't they debunk the fundamentalists on maybe different grounds, such as marriage? How about the sanctity and importance of marriage? As we found out through the last few years of keeping good track of records, statistics, marriage, mom and dad, the biological mom and dad staying together and raising their kids, makes for better kids overall. Maybe they were onto something with that. Maybe there is something that traditional, older wisdom can give us, that we haven't completely, changed and evolved as human beings overnight, that we are stuck, for better or for worse, with a lot of evolution from the past few thousand years. Anyways, if you have a different prime divider, something else that divides humans above that would be subordinate and more important, I'd be interested to hear. It just seems to me that that's the most important starting point in a discussion, is whether knowing, does somebody believe in God or not? Because if not, they adjudicate themselves, and there's no humility as the ultimate judge. Whereas, at least if someone recognizes, even if they recognize the abstraction of God, the utility of God, even if they don't actually believe in God, but just the idea of God, there is still some humility there, I believe, and that they realize that they aren't the prime mover. They are not the ultimate judge of things in this world. So I mentioned this in social media briefly, but I do want to posit again the idea here in topic 7 that algorithms, is when they have a problem, for good or for bad, it's the morality of the people doing the programming that does contain that. You look at what they create, you look at what someone sows, and then what they reap. We know them by their works. So I do, in large degree, even if someone makes a bad program, you can still be moral about, okay, this didn't go well, guys. Like, I've seen lots of developers on Steam who they will put out a game and they'll say, hey, this is my first game, it's really bad, it's for free, I just want some feedback on some stuff here, guys, and if you can give it to me. Wait, you can still make a bad product but still be moral about it. Of course, then there's developers that make very poor games that just use Unity assets and they put them up there and they charge $5-10 for basically nothing. So I would say that if you're looking at a problem and it's sustained and how the people communicate about it, you're knowing them by their work. And an algorithm is a work of human beings. It's not magic and just poof. And because human beings have programmed it, we see in a large effect kind of what the morality is. And especially even if there's an unexpected difficulty. I mean, I've been on Mines for a while, and when Mines has a problem, I found that, the owner, Bill Ottman, he is pretty upfront. Oh, this didn't go well, guys. Sorry about that. I mean, I've even had him respond in comment sections to specific user inquiries. I don't think I've ever seen Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey, maybe Jack does, I'm not really sure, but actually respond in a positive manner to user feedback like that. Of course, Mines is smaller, so there's a little bit of a possibility, but I would think if I had created something like Mines, I would really want to interact, or even any social media program, I would want to interact with the users a whole lot, on a regular basis. Why doesn't Jack Dorsey do a live stream, And sure, it could be messy at first. You need to have a point. You need to decide, what is the point of this live stream? What's the meaning of what's going on here? Like, what am I actually trying to do? But I think most people that make a product are really interested in feedback. I mean, they're really dying for it. But it's, one, hard to get any feedback, and two, it's really hard to get useful feedback as well. People yelling, I don't like your product, it really doesn't help. I mean, that's not useful, really. I'm only in the most bare sense possible. That didn't go well. So I would just be curious, what would you guys think about Susan Wojcicki or Jack Dorsey, all these guys? I mean, Ottman does interviews pretty often and stuff like that, so he's pretty easy to get a hold of. But what about all of them doing like a live stream and talking to people? I'm just curious. Topic, I guess 8 here now. We at theory on I'm bored. I've never understood that statement because I don't actually think I've ever been bored in my life. Maybe it's just because I kind of naturally keep busy and always got something to do, so to speak. I always have stuff that I want to do in the future, so I really don't have time where I'm just sitting around and like there's literally nothing to do. There's always something to do. But I'm also wondering if this isn't sort of a mindset of you're expecting the world to stimulate you from a feeling aspect, but if you think, you're never bored. And what led me to think about this a little bit was Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan a while back, I guess a month ago or so, and he was saying that he's his mind's always exploding with ideas like that. I started thinking, now my mind isn't exploding with ideas, but I mean, if I'm just like sitting and waiting, I'll just be thinking about stuff. And I don't mean feeling stuff, I actually mean thinking about stuff. And I honestly say, I've never been bored. And I just wonder if it's because people are expecting to feel something, to be stimulated by the outside world, and if they aren't receiving that stimulation, that emotional bzz, bzz, bzz in their brain, if they're thinking then that they're bored, when no, you're just not being stimulated. But you could engage your thought processes, actually think about something, not feel, but think about something, and you wouldn't be bored. So I'd appreciate any feedback. Obviously, I've never done a poll on that sort of thing. I have no idea if there's even any research behind it. So if you have any scientific work, or if you have just your own anecdote and other people that you may have talked to, or you yourself, if you are one of those that's bored quite often, I would be interested in you sitting and thinking for a moment, am I waiting to be stimulated? Am I waiting for a feeling to hit me? Or am I actively thinking about things in the world?